Nigeria's new tax law, set to take effect in January 1st, has sparked both applause and apprehension across the country. Proponents say the legislation promises to broaden the tax base, improve government revenue, and strengthen fiscal accountability. Critics, however, warn that the law could place an undue burden on small businesses and ordinary Nigerians struggling with the cost of living. Recent debates in the National Assembly have highlighted concerns over transparency and the potential for administrative loopholes. Despite the fears, the government maintained that proper implementation and public awareness campaigns will mitigate adverse effects. Analysts say the law represents a significant shift in Nigeria's fiscal policy, one that will shape the economic landscape for years to come. Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, joins us now to examine these claims in this debate. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and compliments of the season.
We wish you same. Now, Dr. Muda, how do you assess the potential impact of the new tax law on small and medium-sized enterprises in Nigeria?
Well, for most small and medium enterprises in Nigeria, I think the new tax law is a good development because it offers quite a number of exemptions and incentives. Exemptions, from the payment of VAT, from the payment of company income tax for those within the threshold of 100 million naira turnover and below. I think that for me is a good development. And of course, there's also the benefit of, collapsing all manner of taxes into very few taxes, because before now we have taxes that number up to 30 different kind of taxes. So there's been a lot of harmonization about these taxes. And for the low-income earners, a threshold of, I think, 100,000, those earning below, 100,000 and below have been exempted from the personal income tax. So for small business and low-income earners, I think it's a good development. But that is for those who are in the formal sector. In the informal sector, it's a completely different story, because the informal sector operators, they don't even have records for you to even determine what their turnover is. They don't have record to determine what their taxes are. They don't know anything about filing of returns. They don't know anything about paying of all these taxes. So in the implementation phase, we need to be very careful how we manage the implementation, so that we don't have a major backlash, both economically, socially, and politically. So we need to be extremely very careful in the implementation, especially in the informal sector of the economy.
All right, so moving forward, what measures should the government implement to ensure smooth compliance and avoid overburdening businesses in the country?
You see, there is no legislation that is perfect. There is no reform that is perfect. So my appeal will be that as we progress with the implementation, we will get feedback, and the government must be ready to fine-tune these tax laws as we go ahead. I'll give you an example. Already, those who are in the capital market have been raising concerns about the capital gains tax, which was moved from 10% to 30%. For a particular threshold. Yes, it has been argued that it's for those who are in the upper end of transactions in the stock market. But nonetheless, it has implications. For the stock market, it has implications for the attraction of a foreign capital and even domestic capital. Then the computation of it, again, people have argued that, okay, if you want to tax the capital gains at 30%, what about the cost of the investment? What about the cost of fund? Is there any provision for that? So as we progress with this implementation, we should be ready to fine-tune it as we go along, bearing in mind that there is no reform that is perfect. So we should be ready to correct those imperfections as we progress with the implementation.
All right, so could this law encourage greater formalization of Nigeria's informal sector? And if so, how would that be?
Well, it's not likely, because already those in the informal sector are jittery. I learned that some of them are even already taking their money away from the bank because there is already an instruction to the banks, to report or file information on any transaction that is above 25 million naira per quarter on any account should be filed or reported to the FRS. So those kind of instructions are beginning to send a lot of jitters. People are interpreting it in different ways. I've seen people argue that, okay, all this money that are going through my accounts are not my money. They are my customers' money. They are my clients' money. So how do you use that to assess whether I should pay this much or I should pay that much? So these are part of the things that we are very sensitive, that we need to be very careful about. Otherwise, more and more people will get out of the banking system. And that even creates, making more people to become informal in their transactions. So a lot of education and a lot of care in the implementation is extremely very important.
All right, so how might the law affect foreign investments and Nigeria's overall business climate?
Well, in the overall business climate, I think it is good because we have a much more transparent tax system. The compliance is likely to be better. For investors that are not particularly compliant, this may not be good news for them. I'm sorry, because the environment is becoming tighter now. But for those investors that are compliant, whether domestic or foreign, I mean, nothing will change. You have more transparency, we have more accountability and all of that. And of course, there are also some incentives that have been given to manufacturers in withholding tax and so on. But there are also some additional burden which some of the large businesses have complained about. Right now, the pioneer status has been removed completely, and the pioneer status has helped quite a number of industries to scale up investments over the years, but that has been scrapped. In place of that, we now have a 4% development incentive, which is being given, for companies that are investing in priority sectors. So some people believe that is not as good as having pioneer status. So there are a few issues here and there that people are not happy about. But just as I said, it cannot be a perfect legislation. As we progress with it, we continue to refine it.
All right, so we just got a little bit of information. Airpeace CEO Alan Onyema is saying that Nigeria's domestic aviation sector faces a looming crisis as the new tax laws threaten to push ticket prices beyond 1 million naira. Now, looking at the statement coming from Alan Onyema, what do you make of this? Do you really see this impacting the aviation sector and actually pushing up the prices up to 1 million naira, especially with the fact that the sector in itself is already struggling?
Well, it is possible. It may not be good news for aviation sector, and it may not even be good news for some other sectors. That is why I was talking about implementation. Because you make laws for people, you don't make people for laws. So as you progress with the implementation, it should not be a hard and fast thing. It should not be cast in stone. There has to be some flexibility in the implementation of this law. That is the emphasis that I think we should put out there. It's a good law, but it's not a perfect law. Now we have had complaints from the aviation sector. The sector is already overburdened by different taxes and all of that. And some waivers have been given. If this new tax law has now removed those waivers, of course, that will be additional burden on them. So this is why I was talking about the need to ensure that we are very meticulous, we are very strategic in the implementation of this law. We don't have to implement everything at a go. We need to implement, taking again feedback from the citizens on how we should progress so that we don't disrupt the entire system. And don't forget, 2026 is a pre-election year. So the government also needs to be very careful because of the political implications of some of these things.
All right, so the new tax laws are set to be implemented by January 1st. Do you think that this is enough time to address some of the loopholes as well as get enough reaction from other businesses and possible foreign investors?
No, of course, the law has been announced, close to 6 months now. Preparations have been ongoing. So in the last 6 months, you can say that we have been in a transition phase. But again, as implementation begins, some of those loose ends will begin to manifest. Some of those shortcomings will begin to manifest. And the government must be ready, to address them as those things manifest. That is what is important. And we also have an ombudsman, which is supposed to entertain complaints and all of that. But again, I must emphasize, we need to make the process inclusive. We need to also take feedback from the citizens so that we don't have any serious backlash as a result of this tax reform.
All right, that was Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO of CPPE, discussing the new tax laws which will be implemented fully January 1st.